Declare the meeting proceedings underway, and before commencement of the meeting, I acknowledge that the Tasmanian Aboriginal community is the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and pay respects to elders past and present, and advise that the meeting is being audio-visually recorded and will be available on our website. So, item 1 is apologies. I note Kay's not here.
Yes.
I note that there are no apologies. Item 2, rates and charges. I don't think it's really structured so that we can break it out ad seriatim, so I'm prepared to accept a recommendation A, which involves definitions, interpretations, general rate, services rates and charges, and also fire service rate, and maximum percentage increases, and so on. And then that's it, there's no B. So, A 1 to 10. Thanks, Alderman Hume. Secretary? Alderman Campbell, would you like to speak to it?
Look, I think we've covered this pretty comprehensively in our workshop. What we're looking at is a 2.3% increase in council's rating effort. That is consistent with Hobart CPI. Having said that, when it comes to the issue of increasing rates, we've discussed ad infinitum all the various measures you could use in terms of inflation, and what's equitable, and what would fit in with household budgets, and there are so many different ways of looking at it that basically you could argue it forever. I mean, how long is a piece of string? What I think we've done is, and I think we do it every year, is we strike and I know there's at least one alderman who'll disagree with me on this, but we strike a reasonably good balance between keeping our rates at an affordable level and delivering decent services for the ratepayers of Clarence. So I commend the resolution.
Other speakers? Alderman James?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make 2 points. Firstly, our discussion leading up to the striking of the rates, as far as the recurrent budget is concerned, I don't think we spent enough time on it. There was this 2-week gap between when we dealt with the first round on the current expenditure. Then we had a gap. Later, we came back and basically approved the budget, the capital and the actual recurrent, and fees and charges. So there wasn't as much work put in to the exercise as far as the recurrent budget is concerned as it was for the capital. Also, we didn't have a bus tour as we've always had, and that normally is associated with capital. However, there is some flow on to recurrent, because some of those items that are in the recurrent, obviously, we would have picked up on the bus tour. So it seemed to me that we didn't spend enough time on recurrent when we should have, when we did spend adequate time, I believe, on the capital. The other item that I want to discuss or mention here is in relation to Warrane and Clarendon Vale. My understanding is there's something like 5,000 properties within the city within the Clarendon Vale and also in the Warrane area that have had an adjustment, valuation adjustment through the Treasury Department or the Valuer General. I think he's connected with the Treasury anyway. And as a result of that, there have been some comparisons provided to me from the Valuation Office in relation to the 2015 and the 2017 movements in the rates. And what's interesting is that under residential for 2015, Clarendon Vale was 1.0, Clifton Beach 1.0, Lauderdale 1.0 and Oak Downs 1.0. So they're all in that area of 1 percentage point. Go to 2017 and we look at Clarendon Vale in 2017, the figures here are in fact the Clarence under residential, Gilston Bay 1.15, Rose Bay, Rosley and Warrane 1.16. So what I'm saying is that we've identified Warrane and Clarendon Vale, and they are, I think, probably two of the areas within the city that are probably experiencing some difficulty as far as getting ends meet, and they are going to be expected to experience a rate increase of just over 4% in 2017 and 18. I know it's been discussed it's coming off a low rate base, but at the end of the day, they are still going to experience a 4% increase, whereas a lot of the other, and we've seen that sample, will be experiencing a 2.3, and some in the better off areas will actually be lower than that. And because we're looking at the whole city, we shouldn't, I think, identify why a suburb, i.e. Warrane or in fact Clarendon Vale, ought to have a hike, a rate increase of 4% when in fact others are experiencing, in the better off areas, if I can use that scenario, are experiencing 2.3 and lower. I won't support the rate increase.
Through you, Mr Mayor, could Mr Barter actually provide a response to Alderman James in relation to his question?
Can you remind us what the question was? Because I think it's fair that Mr Barter answer questions, but I don't think it's fair that he would be asked to respond.
Well, my understanding was that Alderman James actually asked why these two areas should experience a rate increase. Well, that's my understanding. So, Mr Barter, Mr Mayor, would Mr Barter be able to respond to my question as to why these two areas are experiencing this particular rate increase?
Mr Barter, are you able to
or their particular rate increase?
Through you, Mr Mayor, if it will assist, I guess the properties generally across the city will experience a rate increase. I think the question you've asked is in relation to the extent of the rate increase which applies to some suburbs. I think we've already heard the primary driver behind that is the difference in adjustment factors that have been applied by the Valuer General effective from 1st of July 2017.
like Mr Barter to clarify my sums in the context that the rate increase for Clarendon Vale would equal $40 a year or $1 a week, less than $1 a week. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I can refer to a property, and a lot of properties in Clarendon Vale are quite homogenous, so one or two properties is fairly representative of the whole. I did provide an example to Alderman of a property in Clarendon Vale with a adjusted capital value of $176,000. Their rates will move from $1,022 to $1,068, so that's what, $46.
So that's of the order of just less than $1 a week, if I'm picking up on Alderman Farn's question.
$1 a week.
Thank you. Other speakers? Alderman Cusick?
The amount we need to collect in rates revenue reflects the increase needed to maintain the level of service we're currently providing. The only way, if costs are increasing and revenue from a rates perspective is not, then our only other alternatives are to limit cost increases or costs by reduction of costs. That means either lesser services or less staff. And I'm confident in the management, in particular the General Manager, in setting staff levels. I note the CPI for Hobart, March to March, March 16 to 17 was 2.3. Now that is only indicative, but it indicates the general rise in prices in Hobart. Secondly, if we do not match income to costs, then and continue to increase costs, then eventually we'll need to, in later years, have a much greater increase. It is a huge generalisation, I believe, to state that property owners in Moraine or Clarendon Vale are less able to pay than some property owners in other jurisdictions, other areas of the diocese. We receive independent revaluations, and based on those independent revaluations, the rates level increases, and across the board this year the officers are recommending a 2.3%, and I support that.
Walker.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of points. One of the key points, and it has been said, but I would like to re-emphasise it and say it plainly. We are value takers, not value makers. We don't sit around a board and say, oh, what do you reckon that suburb should have this year? Oh, why don't we give it that one, and that one there can have something else. We take what the Valuer General tells us are the figures. That said, it is an option available to every member of our community to dispute that. They can dispute that with that office, and that may result in their valuation decreasing. Consequently, it can also result in it increasing when a revaluation is done. But that is an avenue of appeal to people around this. But we are taking the values that are given to us. So that is one component. Another component, I guess, when we think about this is council. It's about choices and priorities, strategies and alternatives. And around this table, in my time here, I'm trying to think of some of the other budget alternatives that have come up. And if I recall properly, across this table, in meetings past, when talking about this, some people have suggested that a way forward would be a 50% fixed component to rates. Not our current run, but 50%. Now, if we were to go with 50%, and I might, if it's all right with you, Mr Mayor, go and ask Mr Barter this. I'm not asking for right down to the last figure, but if we were to shift from our current fixed fee to a 50% fixed fee, would it be fair and fairly safe to assume that suburbs such as Warrane, Clarendon, Vale would have been facing a 30% rate rise?
Through you, Mr Mayor, wouldn't like to quantify the amount of rates, but certainly an increase. All our modelling over many years has shown that an increase in the level of fixed charges.
So, you know, people are asking what are the alternatives to the budget that is before us now? That is one. And anyone that has ever championed that across this table or in any other forum was quite frankly championing an increase to those areas of 30% or more. That is what some people have suggested in meetings to my report. So I am supporting this budget. As I've said before, I give it a pass mark. In many ways, in a normal course of events, a 2.3% increase matching CPI is something that you'd give a good tick to. I'm giving it satisfactory. I'm passing it. I think that we have an obligation to drill down further into our operations and try and find efficiencies there. We do that cursorily. We do that sometimes in depth in little areas, but I think that's an area that we can do better, and that's a challenge for us next time round. I suggest you all support this budget.
Yeah, a couple of points I'd like to make, and I thank Aldermen for their contributions. Firstly, in terms of the points that Alderman James made, the time spent on the budget is something that I think I would actually partly agree with him on. I do think that it's, you know, it's something we could be spending a bit more time on, but having said that, perhaps what we need to be spending a bit more time on actually also is looking at what the service gaps are across our municipality. Because it seems to me that sometimes we tend to do that on a bit of an ad hoc basis. Particular types of services may not be covering particular areas of our municipality. That's something that we probably take. Having said that, if we had spent more time on that budget, it really begs the question, would we have arrived at a different outcome? And I'm not sure that we did. Now I know through our workshop discussions, for example, on top of the savings that were already identified to get us to the 2.3% rating, there were some suggestions of other areas we can look at. We discussed those suggestions quite comprehensively, and you know, we rejected those suggestions on the basis that with the detail provided in those areas, that expenditure was, you know, actually quite necessary. So, you know, I think we did take a fairly comprehensive look at that. I'm not convinced that having spent more time on this coming financial year's budget, we would have arrived at a different outcome to the one that we did. Now, yes, as different areas receive different valuations, there are going to be variations in the amount of the rates increase. But if you go capping increases and then you end up charging different rates for properties in different areas, different rates by property value, you end up with anomalies. You end up with this rate differentiation that then becomes a historical anomaly that it can actually be quite notoriously difficult to fix. Now, I agree that you know, we should consider the needs of people, particularly in low-income suburbs. But having said that, we are not a welfare organisation. You know, really the financial welfare is really, I think, more a policy issue for state and federal governments. You know, we don't have the tools, we don't have the data to address those needs and concerns. Yes, we provide, you know, various programs that address welfare issue, you know, social programs like, you know, along the lines of healthy eating and health promotion and so on.
Thank you, Alderman Hume. You have reached time.
Okay, thank you.
I take it you're commending the motion.
Yes.
So the motion before the Chair is that we set the rates and charges in accordance with the agenda. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And I'll declare our special meeting closed.